This character was directly inspired by Kelly, our Kelly. She's actually holding us at knife point to do this.
No!
I'm kidding. Hey everyone, welcome to BYOB, the Bring Your Own Book podcast. I'm Nikki.
I'm Tilly.
And I'm Kelly.
This week, we're talking about the YA thriller Allegedly by Tiffany D. Jackson, which was published in 2017. Just a heads up that this book deals with many difficult subjects, including psychological and physical abuse, graphic descriptions of attempted murder, infanticide, racially motivated violence, and PTSD. Here's the publisher's synopsis from Tilly.
Mary B. Addison killed a baby. Allegedly. She didn't say much in that first interview with detectives, and the media filled in the only blanks that mattered. A white baby had died while under the care of a church-going black woman and her 9-year-old daughter. The public convicted Mary, and the jury made it official. But did she do it? She wouldn't say. Mary survived 6 years in baby jail before being dumped in a group home. The house isn't really home. No place where you fear for your own life can be considered a home. Home is Ted, who she meets on assignment at a nursing home. There wasn't a point to setting the record straight before, but now she's got Ted and their unborn child to think about. When the state threatens to take her baby, Mary must find the voice to fight her past. And her fate lies in the hands of the one person she distrusts the most, her mama. No one knows the real mama, but who really knows the real Mary?
Ooh, oh my god.
Dun dun dun.
It's just like, even the synopsis for this is so good.
The
It
cover?
really lives up. Yeah.
The cover is what grabbed me. I was like, oh, what is this?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. Kelly is now going to introduce the drink that we've chosen for this episode.
Yes, so the drink we've chosen to pair with this episode is a Christmas rum punch. And I know that sounds so way out there, but we chose it because the characters drink at a Christmas party at Mary's lawyer's house in the book. So we thought, since this is one of the few happy moments that takes place in the book, we thought, why not celebrate that moment by having this drink? So this drink is made with white rum, cherry juice, cranberry juice, simple syrup, allspice, ginger, nutmeg, and ginger ale. So, all right, here we go, ladies. Cheers!
Cheers.
Cheers.
Ooh. That is quite strong.
Oh yeah, that's strong. Holy moly.
Ooh, I don't know.
Very Christmassy though.
Yeah, I don't know who's drinking this at the party. Mary is not of age, so it's quite strong.
I think it was her lawyer and all the other adults were drinking the rum punch, and Mary was having eggnog.
Oh, yes, of course. This is definitely...
I suggested eggnog, but Kelly hates it, and so does Nikki, apparently. So
I don't like real eggnog, but I do like the, I think it's like almond milk or something. Like it's fake eggnog in a blue bottle, and it's actually great.
Oh.
But I don't like real eggnog. I never have, and I never will.
Yeah. Something about drinking eggs is really unsettling.
Right? When I think of Christmas, I think of eggs in a cup. Said no one ever. So...
Like Gaston drinking 5 dozen eggs every morning to help him get strong.
I think it's large. To help me get large.
Dang, you're right. And now I'm as big as a barge.
Roughly the size of a barge. Yeah.
The listeners get the idea.
Already way off topic. What was in this cup? Okay.
I know. It was strong, though. Okay, well, gird your loins, everybody.
To help us get back on topic,
yes,
we are going to give our star ratings out of 5. Like we say in every episode, we all have a different reason for our ratings, which we will explain when we say what they are. We do this purely because this is what we're putting our ratings as on Goodreads. And we're going to start with Tilly.
Great. So I was kind of conflicted on this book. I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5 stars. And in general, I really enjoyed the writer's style. Like, I thought a lot of the stylism and the choices in the writing were really strong. And I thought the dialogue and the characterization were also really strong. But I had a problem when it came to plot, as there were just so many inconsistencies for me in the timeline and kind of unnecessary plot twists, I felt. I do recognize that a lot of this has to do with like the first person perspective and kind of wondering, can we trust what the narrator is telling us and all that stuff. But I just don't think it was very successful all the time. And also the ending made me angry because I felt it undermined a lot of the messages that were kind of built into the story up until that point. So that's why I give it a 3 out of 5. But I'm excited to talk about it because I think there's a lot of really kind of juicy stuff there to dig into.
Yeah, definitely. What about you, Kelly?
So I gave this a 4 out of 5. I read this a little bit ago, and I remember just being so angry and also like flabbergasted almost by the ending. I was like, what? And I had to like tell somebody about it because we hadn't read this for the podcast yet. So I had to talk to my husband, and I was like, oh my God, you don't know what I just read, what I just went through, you know? I found it was such an easy book to read. It was very fast paced. I found myself not wanting to put it down. I was always trying to figure out Mary's story and the case that was put against her. And I really didn't guess much right. So, I mean, that's always points in my book if I can't guess what's happening or going to happen. And this was my first time reading a Tiffany D. Jackson book. It was actually her debut novel, but it's a few years old now. So she's had many more books come out, and I'm so excited to keep reading her work because I feel like this was a really good introduction to her. Yeah, I gave it a 4 to 5. I really enjoyed it. There's definitely some things that we're going to talk about, but yeah, overall a wild ride.
Awesome. Yeah, I gave this book a 3 out of 5. And I really enjoyed it. I really liked all of the kind of, not mixed media isn't the right way to put it, but I really liked having all of the interview clips put in there and the different sections of like books that were written about the main character and all of that stuff. I think for me, it was very similar to what Tilly was saying. While I really enjoyed the story, I didn't feel particularly strongly towards it, which I think is why I settled on a 3, because even though at the end I was like, this was great, I wasn't like, this is a new favorite or anything. I was just like, yeah, that was a good book. And yeah.
Well, and there were a lot of parts that were really like kind of difficult to read and like to kind of process, so that makes sense. It's not like an insta favorite. I don't think it's a sort of book that you can like reread a lot, or at least I don't think I could, because it was, like Kelly was saying, made me like so angry a lot of the time and so like upset and baffled. And those are all like important feelings to get from a book, but they're not ones that I want to like relive all the time.
Right.
I would be interested to read it again now that I've read it and know the ending. I would like to go through and like try to annotate certain things to like make my own little folder, like file on her to figure out like, okay, what's going on here, what's going on there, and just like, yeah, like just because there were so many different parts in this that I couldn't keep track of everything. So it would be interesting to go through it now that I know the whole story and be like, okay, here's this, here's that, you know? But yeah, I can't reread this like all the time because it was a lot.
I didn't read the book, actually. I listened to the audiobook, which was narrated by Bonnie Turpin, who also narrated Children of Blood and Bone, which I did not like the book, but I loved the narration. And it is a great way to consume this book. It was amazing. She does such distinct voices and accents for every single character. It was so clear who was talking all the time. It was very distinctive between when she was having an inner thought and when she was actually talking to people, because that happens quite often. She'll answer in her head and then she'll answer aloud something different. But yeah, I think that elevated the book for me a lot. And I think if I would have just read it, maybe I wouldn't have felt as strongly about the content. What do we think about the characters and how they were written?
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so here's my thing. I thought the character of Mary was really well written. I think a lot of the other characters felt like just a name and a descriptor and nothing else. Like they felt kind of two-dimensional.
Right.
And I think before we started recording, Kelly, you were talking about how you had trouble kind of remembering some of the names. And I think that's part of it, is that a lot of the side characters were very peripheral to Mary's story, and they weren't fleshed out at all, which is okay, I think, because the main thing is about Mary. Like every person in the story is related to her in some way, not family related, but like is involved with her life in some way. So I think it makes sense that they're not all like as three-dimensional as she is, but it did make it feel kind of uneven in that way.
Yeah, I agree with you, because I feel like the reason, maybe, I mean, I'm not Tiffany D. Jackson. Maybe she'll let us know one day. Probably not, but hey. Maybe it's like that because this is told through Mary, essentially, right? And she didn't really have strong relationships with the girls in her group home. So maybe it was kind of left like that on purpose to be like, okay, there's their name, brief description, and here's what they said to me, you know, like, I don't know. Because while I agree with you that they weren't as fully fleshed out as Mary was, I still felt like all the anger and fear and everything, like when shit was going down in the house, I was like, oh my God. So I thought it was still written well, but it just like, I only remember like maybe one person from the house, you know, the new girl, which we'll get into more about her. And also, one of the girls was named Kelly, and I was like, uh-oh.
And she was not nice.
Yeah. This was not me, okay?
Yeah.
Obviously, they're fictional.
But yeah.
This character was directly inspired by Kelly, our Kelly. She's actually holding us at knife point to do this.
No!
I'm kidding. Clearly. We're in different
rooms. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But yeah, I agree. I think that it does make sense that it could be a plot device for the story, depending on how you look at it. Especially the end of the book, you get a whole new perspective in the last like page and a half on everything that's happened. But it did bother me a little bit, especially because I was listening to it, that I wasn't immersed in it the same way as if you were reading a book. And so it was like, oh, the therapist came, the dumb white lady, and that was basically her only signifier throughout the whole thing. And then there was Miss Stein and Miss Reba, the two group home women who were like just described as being like gross and like, and I was like, okay, that's okay. But I think even though it was used possibly as a plot device, I still would have appreciated more from that to help connect.
Yeah. I kept feeling myself having trouble, like imagining what things look like too. And that to me is kind of another, like, again, I think you're totally right that it could be like a plot device because it's all told from Mary's point of view. But yeah, it just made it hard to imagine what things looked like. And I'm very visual, so I needed that.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. Because, yeah, like I couldn't tell you much about most of the people in here. Just that most of them were nasty, you know? And
yeah.
God, so nasty.
Needed
so
a hug,
awful.
Needed some attention, like good attention, you know, like care, tender love and care. And yeah, some of them needed a a strong word or something, but some of them needed a hug, okay?
One single strong word.
Yes. Starts with a
Strength.
F. No. Strength. No.
Yeah, I found like with that also, the pacing of the book didn't really do it for me. There were just like weird things with like, I felt like some things dragged on way too long. And I was like, okay, can we get going here? The book isn't that long. Where are we going with this? And some of the things that got wrapped up at the end, or things were revealed that I felt like were a big deal, and they would be a big deal for like a second, and then it was like, oh, that's fine, whatever, we're just moving on from this little tidbit of information. And I was like, I don't think that's okay.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of bothered me a little bit throughout.
Yeah, the pacing for me was a bit uneven as well, and I think part of it had to do with the way that the narrative was kind of broken up. So most of the narrative felt very like stream of consciousness from Mary, which I enjoy. I really love like stream of consciousness, like Virginia Woolf kind of styles of books. I'm really interested in that. But then when it was broken up with all these other tidbits about her life and about like the crime and the interviews and the police detective work and all that stuff, which was also really great, but it just kind of like interrupted the flow every time that happened. And then I kind of had to be like, okay, right, what's happening? Where are we in the timeline? Like I felt it was almost jumping around like a little bit too much, so that I almost had trouble keeping track of where in the story we were, especially because Mary tended to flashbacks to her past so often and like her childhood. So I sometimes had to like read back a couple pages and be like, wait a minute, where am I? What's happening? Which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, but I did kind of clock for me as like just a little uneven.
So I want to talk about the mystery, or like the whole plot. But you can't really talk about it without giving some major things away. Are we done with first impressions? We're ready to
I think so.
Move on to some book recommendations?
Yes, I think so.
I will say for me, I do not have a book recommendation for this, because I felt like the plot was so heavy that things that were coming to mind were really superficially related and didn't feel like they were in the same realm as this. So I'm not going to give a book recommendation for this one, but you ladies feel free to drop some good ones. I don't know.
Sure.
This is like a poop joke.
I feel like Tilly and I are going to be somewhere on the same wavelength here with our recommendations.
Okay. Why don't you go first then?
Okay, because I had two in mind, but I was like, you might be saying the other one that I didn't say to you. So I'll start. So,
oh my God. Okay.
Yeah, you know what I'm going to say. So, okay. If Tilly has not changed her mind, I believe she's going to be recommending something very similar to what I'm going to recommend. I'm going to recommend a play, not a novel. And because similar to what you just said, Nikki, like I was trying to think of a book that I had read that was very similar to this in tone and themes, and not just like, you know, some little happenstance or whatever, you know, like something more substantial. And the thing that came to mind was John Peelmeyer's play, Agnes of God. And I was in that play. Tilly directed that play. Nikki did the lighting design for that play.
It's the play that brought us all together.
Yes,
it really
which
is.
It sounds so bizarre to be recommending that, but honestly, that's the whole vibe I was getting from the synopsis. And then when I read the book, I was like, oh my God. So I played Agnes, and Agnes of God, just to quickly give you some info, is about a postulant nun who has been accused of killing a baby, and not just any baby, but her own baby. So why is a postulant nun, which is like a nun in training, so like picture Maria von Trapp from Sound of Music, okay? Why does she have a baby, and why is this baby dead? And what happened? Who's the father? What's going on? How did this happen in the first place? So the whole play follows her and her psychiatrist and the mother superior, who is like really her mother figure because she's been there since she was a little kid. And the whole play is done through sessions with the psychologist and flashbacks with her and Mother Superior. And it's very dark, infanticide, lots of mental health issues in the play. The play doesn't have any specified characters who are Black, because you could still have Black actors, but they don't have the racial elements in the play like this book does. But I felt like this was a very Very similar story to Allegedly. So I think if you enjoyed this book and you want to try reading a play, Agnes of God by John Peelmeyer is a really good one if you want to pick it up.
Great, thank you. I read a play last year, which I also thought about a lot as I was reading this book. So I'm recommending the play Guarded Girls by Charlotte Corbeil Coleman. I found myself thinking of it a lot while reading this book. It's about 3 imprisoned women of various ages and their guard, and their lives kind of all intertwined throughout the story. The writing is very circular and poetic, which I found kind of paralleled Allegedly as well. And there are kind of differing narratives and perspectives, just like there are in this book. So it's a really excellent play that deals with a lot of the same themes, like bodily autonomy and kind of the failings of the judicial system. And I would encourage you to check it out if those are things you're interested in reading about.
Cool. I have not heard of that one, so I will check it out.
No, I haven't.
It was really good.
Cool.
Okay, so that takes us into spoilers territory. So if you like what you've heard so far, which is a really weird thing to say when you talk about this book, then, and you haven't read the book, you should go read it and then you should come back. Or if you want to keep listening, by all means, do whatever you want. It's a free country. So we're going to start off with a quick recap of the book.
As we know from the synopsis, the book follows Mary B. Addison, a Black teenager who was accused of killing a white baby, Alyssa Richardson, 6 years ago. Though the case made a sensation in the media, the story is told from her point of view as she navigates living in a group home with other teenage girls with criminal records. There are also fictional excerpts sprinkled in from newspaper articles, police interviews, and books written about the murder.
When Mary was questioned about the murder of 3-month-old Alyssa Richardson, she famously didn't say anything about who committed the murder, and she remained similarly closed-mouthed in the narration for much of the book, though we get the sense that she feels she was wrongly accused. She is clearly intelligent and aspires to taking the SATs to enter college, even in her complicated circumstances.
Mary has difficult relationships with nearly everyone in her life, including her housemates, parole officer, and her own mother. Daily life at the group home involves violent bullying from other girls as well as from lazy supervisors. Mary's mother visits every other week like clockwork, but Mary knows her cheery optimism and doting affection are just for show. The one person she trusts is her secret boyfriend, Ted, who also lives in a group home and is mandated to serve as a candy striper in the same nursing home. Aside from Ted, though, Mary's life is a miserable routine with no way out.
Everything changes for Mary when she finds out that she's pregnant with Ted's child, and she learns that as a minor and a ward of the state, her baby will be taken from her. She loves Ted and her unborn child, and she dreams of starting a new life together. She feels she must fight for the baby, and with encouragement from the new girl at the group home, she finds a new lawyer and begins opening up her case again.
Throughout the story, there are many flashbacks to Mary's abusive childhood. Her mama was mentally ill and psychologically abusive in many ways, even going so far as to beat Mary to placate her cruel stepfather, Ray. Mama and Ray arranged for Mary to be on ADHD medication with barely any diagnosis, and we also learned that she had a younger brother, Junior, who died in his sleep under Mary's care. Not doing so great there, Mary. Uh-oh.
Mary's new lawyer, Cora Fisher, takes a special interest in the case as she studied it in law school. She's kind to Mary and aggressive in moving the case forward. Mary tells her that her mama killed Alyssa, stuffing pills in her mouth and performing some sort of religious ceremony, and that she forced Mary to take the blame for it, as they would go easier on kids.
There are many roadblocks along the way in appealing Mary's case, including increased tension and violence in the group home, a lack of cooperation from Mary's group home supervisors, new accusations from Mary's mother, and Mary's own reluctance to give Cora all the details surrounding the night of the murder.
Meanwhile, Mary learns that Ted was not entirely honest with her and that he's been working in the sex trade to keep a roof over his head. While he claims that it means nothing to him and that he's doing it to support the baby, Mary is heartbroken at the betrayal.
In the end, Mary realizes she'll never be able to send Mama to jail, regardless of the evidence, and tells Cora to drop the case. Her new friend, new girl, at the group home turns out to be murderous and unstable and pushes Mary down the stairs at the threat of Mary leaving her to be transferred to a halfway house upstate.
With serious injuries, but with her baby miraculously unharmed, Mary is transferred upstate and reflects that she may not yet be able to take care of her baby on her own. She also reveals that she was lying all along. She did kill Alyssa Richardson by stuffing her pills down her mouth to make her stop crying. She also shows no remorse, explaining that no one would be mad at her since the baby was being bad. She knows that most of the officials involved in her case are now convinced she is innocent, and she revels in being a good liar.
And boy, was she ever! Oh,
I was so angry when I read that. I wanted to, like, throw my Kobo across the room.
I was also really angry. I think, just like you said, Tilly, it really undermined a lot of the things that happened throughout the novel. I think that there are ways that it could have been written that would have been as effective and not made the ending seem like a deception almost. I felt like I read one story and then at the end she was like, just kidding.
You're an idiot. Here's the real story. Yeah. That's how I felt too.
Really?
I felt like
but not
an
in a
idiot.
good way.
No.
Because usually I love stuff like that, but this one just made me feel kind of pissed.
See, I had the opposite. So, I mean, I was still like, oh my God, I can't believe this whole time she did it. Like, I felt like she betrayed me because I was sympathetic to her and I was, but at the same time, everything that happens to her in the book, even though she killed a baby, I'm not saying that that's, I'm not saying that's like, nothing, but like everything that happens to her, I still feel really bad about it. So even though it's like after all this time, she still did it. I think the point is like, she was a kid and she needed help and she didn't get that help. And maybe if things had been better for her, if she wasn't stuck in this system, she wouldn't have been, maybe she wouldn't have killed the baby and maybe she wouldn't have had the rest of her life unfold the way it has so far. So even though I was mad, I wasn't mad. I wasn't mad about the ending of like why the author chose that because I still really liked the ending. I think it was just like I need to go back now and be like, oh my God, did I miss the signs? Like did I miss? Because she had me. She had me hook, line, sinker.
There were a lot of signs, like, the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, no, it makes sense that she was kind of a psychopath all along. Like, there was those moments where she kind of blacked out and someone killed the supervisor's cat and it was never revealed who that was. And there was just, like, a lot of...
She did that?
Yeah, I do think she did that.
I thought it was the new girl. Or
it
that
might have
other
been the
girl.
new
Or
girl.
Kelly. Was it me? Was it Kelly?
There was just... I just feel like the twist ending like opened up more questions than it answered, and that makes me angry as a reader.
For me too, in more of like a real world like thought process, it made me a little upset too at the thought of I guess because she did choose to portray her, she obviously has a mental illness. But when I think about in the real world, accidents happen, that could have been a real 9-year-old and something happened and a baby died. And that 9-year-old is now being treated like an adult and going to prison, and the rest of their life is ruined because of a mistake. Yeah. So I think that for me, in the end, that was the thing that made me kind of the most angry about the ending, because I felt like it was perpetuating this kind of like, I don't know how to say it other than like, there's like the conservatives who were like, if something bad happens, they deserve to be like punished every time, no matter what. And that is what that kind of was telling me at the end. And I was like, I don't agree with that, because I think that if this was the real world and that happened, and whether she did it or not, whether if the kid said, I did this thing, or didn't say anything, and it was assumed that a child made this horrific accident, that would not be the course of action that was taken with them. So I think that for me, that was something and is something that is still really hard for me to let go when I think about the ending of this book.
Yeah.
Because it just makes me feel gross and like awful.
Yeah.
There was a review of the book online, and we should say too that this is a controversial ending. Like they're about split down the middle on Goodreads.
Right.
Like half the people really loved the ending, half the people really hated the ending. And I saw a Goodreads review, and I don't know, I didn't do my research, so I don't know if this is true, but kind of talking about some of the plot holes and about like how the likelihood of a 9-year-old being incarcerated rather than sent to a long-term psychiatric facility is like almost non-existent. And also like with her age and the significant amount of media attention that she got, there was no way that the character would have known, like been unaware that she could appeal. And so there were like some kind of like, I agree with you too, Nikki, like almost like some little like plot holes. I'm like, how could this have happened? But I guess that is also kind of the failings of the justice system where these things do happen. And I think there was a really powerful quote in the book from, I think it was one of the excerpts, about how if she had been white, if Mary had been white, or if Alyssa Richardson, the baby, had been black, then this whole situation would have been different because there's all these like preconceived stereotypes and kind of like this righteous rage that people get when it's like a white baby that's been killed. Yeah. So there's just like so much complexity happening around this story.
Yeah.
And I think it's also important to say that we live in Canada. And while we do know about things that are going on in the States, we do live in a very different like judicial society than they do in America. And there is still a lot of racism here, but the way that we do things in Canada is very different than how they do things in the United States. So we are speaking from like our own personal background as white people, as Canadians, and we do not have the background knowledge to say for sure this is how it is. So just everybody with a grain of salt.
Disclaimer.
Yeah.
These are just our thoughts about a fictional book.
Yeah. We are not lawyers.
No.
We are not lawyers. We are all bookworms.
No, but this is like just because it's something that you can't really not have strong feelings about.
Yeah, if you don't have a strong feeling, I'm like, what's wrong? Like, you just don't care about people, I guess? Cool. Because, what I was going to say this whole time is, like, even though it's, like, maybe it's not believable at times or whatever, or, like, how could this happen? My whole thing going into it was, like, okay, it's because she's black and it's a white baby, you know? Because... yeah, like, I don't think we need to give examples, you know, of, like, how many times this kind of stuff has happened. However, I do want to say, if anyone is to blame, it's frickin' Mama, okay? It is Mary's mother, who she also needed some help, and she did not get the help that she needed. But she, like, throughout the whole book, I was so angry at her. I was so angry, and I was so upset for Mary because you could tell she still loved her and, like, cared about what she thought about her at some points in the book, and then other times she did not.
Craved her validation.
Yeah, because that's her mom, right? So the fact that she still calls her Mama, you know? I mean, first of all, it tells you right there that she is still very young at heart or mentally. Because, like, I don't call my mom Mama all the time. All the time. I mean, I call her Mom, you know? Like, I don't refer to her as Mama or whatever, right? Especially to other people.
It's also, she does say that her mother was, like, from the South, though. And that's a very common thing. You call your mom Mama or, like, Ma and stuff like that. Mommy.
Yeah.
Adults still call.
Mother dearest.
Yeah, so... I do agree that she was young, but I think that was more of like a
cultural thing.
Yeah,
like
cultural
Southern,
thing than an age thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you're probably right. But yeah, that mom, I swear to God, whenever she came to visit, I was like ready. I was like, okay, now what are you going to do? Or what are you not going to do? You know? Just like, she was just an ostrich, head in the sand, did not want to deal with anything. 15 minutes tops. Ugh. I couldn't.
Yeah, and while I was reading through, I mean, the first kind of glimpse that we get into Mary's attitude towards her mother is her talking about, like, I know she's fake, like, no one knows what a manipulator she is. And now with that insight about the end and about how, like, Mary's actually the manipulator, I do question some of that, like, setup that we got for Mama. Doesn't obviously undermine any of the things that she did throughout the novel. But I kept thinking about... do you guys know that, like, the Gypsy Rose story?
Yes.
In the Munchausen
Gypsy
by
Rose
proxy?
Blanchard.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I kept getting from this relationship because, and it was kind of solidified with the, like, the mom was a neonatal nurse, but she didn't have any certifications. And then she kind of, like, put her daughter on medication without any explanation of why. And she didn't have her birth certificate. And there were just, like, all these sketchy things that were happening that I was like, is she going through Munchausen by proxy? What's going on here? Is she having, like...
Right.
Yeah, anyway, it was very, very uncomfortable to read, and it made me angry a lot of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, there were, I mean, a lot of things. I don't know what I think. This book just makes me sick, honestly.
I'm sorry.
There's just, like, there's so much, and it's really hard to talk about because it's in first person. So those scenes with her mother, is that really what's happening, or is that just what she's perceiving to happen? Right. How much of a blame does her mother really, how much of a blame can you put on her mother? There's obviously, she has a lot of mental health issues that she hasn't been getting proper care with. And I mean, we all know it. If you're in a situation like that, it's really hard to come out of it. I imagine it'd be even harder if you don't have the support of a community and you're a single parent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I look back on all of that, knowing that the whole time Mary B. Addison was a huge fucking liar and crazy pants, then I'm just like, I don't know what was real in the book anymore. So I don't even know how to, like, talk about anything and be like, this is what it was, because I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, truly the definition of an unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
Just like all over the place. I mean, really starting to question everything that was in the book at all. Who knows?
I have to say, though, like, this is going to sound so bad, but
uh-oh.
Throughout the book, they kept saying, or, like, I think they kept, like, calling her or referring to Mary as being dumb, or, like some people were, right? And then certain doctors were like, no, she's not. Like, she's very intelligent. Like, I don't think she needs to be on this medication, like, all this stuff. Yeah. And she would just kind of, like, quietly go about her day and wasn't very talkative. And then at the end, when the twist came, I was like, oh my God, this girl, she has been, you know, biding her time, playing the game of chess, you know? And even though the ending is still like, wow, she did a lot of harm, you know? And I still feel sympathetic to her, my reader brain is going, wow, you know, look at that. Like, she played that game of chess so well. And that's what I mean. It's going to sound bad, but I was like, wow.
The thing that confuses me with that, though, is I'm like, did she play it so well? Because you think she would have just told them her mom did it, and then she could leave and have her baby and do all of her life things, but still she's still trapped. People are going to still suspect her forever of being the one who killed Alyssa. And I'm just like, what did she really gain from doing all of this? I don't know.
She had to get the necklace. That's why, isn't it? That's why she didn't say anything, because she needed, like, the physical evidence to be like, here's that necklace.
I thought that she does have it. She said, I'll give it to you but she could have said, to the police, I know where this is buried. I buried it.
Yeah.
Or, you know, like, that was missing for me a little bit. With having editors and everything and all of the people that this book had to go through to get out onto the shelf, I'm really surprised at all of the kind of plot holes that were there and that they weren't a little bit more careful and attuned to tying up those little things at the end. I don't think every question always needs to be answered, but there were definitely certain things here where I was just left with a big, like, unnecessary WTF. Like the cat. That was like a one moment, and then everybody forgot about the cat, and I was like, okay, that's... Even I forgot about the cat. So
you know how they say that everything is in a movie or a book like for a reason. Like there's always a reason for every little thing. And this, I was like, is there always a reason? I don't know.
I don't think there was for that. I think it was shock value.
I don't know. I was definitely shocked when that happened. I was like, oh my God, because even though I hated those two women who ran the house home, the group home, the house home, home in the house.
And I'm like, what do you call them? Were they like house mothers? Were they foster mothers?
I thought they were like foster people, but not really, because they're still wards of the state.
Yeah, this is another question I have, Tiffany. What is their role?
Are they guardians?
So employment records.
I mean, I have not been in a group home, but I used to watch this show called The Fosters, and Rosie O'Donnell was on it. And she played the, like, house mother for the group home. And from what I got from that is they lead activities. There is somebody for these girls to talk to and basically act as their guardian and help teach them skills that they should know for when they leave it and go into the real world. Things like cooking, cleaning, being responsible with time management, getting tasks done, and all of those kind of things. So they're essentially supposed to be acting as their kind of like mothers through their time at the facility.
Well, then they were even worse at their job than I thought they were.
They were terrible. They were the worst. I mean, I still wish their cat hadn't been killed because that was truly horrific.
That was upsetting. Yes.
Yeah. But, like, I don't remember what happened around that moment because I swore that was Kelly or the new girl. I didn't think that was Mary. So now I'm like, wait a sec. Who did it?
But we didn't think Mary killed I don't know what I was going to say Addison. Alyssa the whole time.
That's true.
So,
yeah, it was just never explained. And yeah, it was I mean, okay, I'm still parsing out what bothered me about the ending, and I think I figured it out. So I think what it is, this is something that takes me out of a reading experience when I feel like I can see the author's intention rather than experiencing it, like rather than receiving the message, I can see what the author is meaning to do here. And it didn't feel like true to the setup. So it made me think of someone like kind of pitching this story. Like, okay, so what if there's this young girl who everyone believes committed this crime, and then we convince the reader that she didn't, and then at the end, turns out she did. Yeah, and that's what I was like thinking about at the end. I was like, are you kidding me? Like I can just see some like network executive pitching this and the CW being like, we'll take it, you know? And that's like what bothers me about it, because I want to just be along for the ride and have it feel like woof, because it's true, not because it's shocking.
And you know what that reminds me of? And they did it excellently in this one. Have either of you seen Us, the movie?
Yes.
Tilly probably hasn't because it's kind of scary. It's
the Jordan Peele one?
Yes.
No.
Okay. Are you going to watch it or can I ruin it?
Probably not, because I'm scared.
Okay. If people listening have not seen Us, please just skip ahead a little bit because, oh my God. But at the end of Us, he does the same thing where the entire movie, you believe that there's like this alternate world of sorts, kind of like an upstairs, downstairs, but not. I'm describing this terribly, but anyways, just to get to the point.
It's like each person has another person. Like they're double.
Like their shadow, I think they call them.
Yeah.
So
and
like
they live underground
below.
In these like kind of tunnels. It looks like honestly like a high school gymnasium.
Yes. And they do. Anyways, that's besides the point. But anyways, so the main character, played by Lupita Nyong'o, the whole time you think her shadow, the evil one with the creepy voice, because she has a speech impediment, I forget what it's called, but anyways, she sounds like she's very raspy, throaty. It is very creepy sounding, I have to say. Sorry. But at the end, you find out that the creepy one was actually the real Lupita Nyong'o, and the shadow has taken over from a while ago and has been living her life as if she were the real Lupita Nyong'o. And so this whole time you think that the shadow one is the villain, and it's not. It's the one you've been with the whole time, sympathizing with. And it was like, like so creepy and well done. So I think that's what she was trying to go for here, and it didn't work as well, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and
yeah,
I don't know. It's so subjective, right? Because I mean, I could maybe read this book 10 years from now and be like, "Wow, it was so well executed." So who knows? I do think that movies are kind of like a lesser time commitment.
Yeah,
Because I felt like I'd spent so long in this world and like rooting for this character and feeling all of her pain, and then all of a sudden I was like, "Oh, she's a sociopath." Well, and a murderer and a compulsive liar.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with myself now.
That's like, so you were just feeling fake pain because she didn't really actually care about anything that was happening.
I need to talk about Ted for a little bit.
Oh,
okay?
yeah.
Oh, Ted. I feel bad for Ted. I feel sad for Ted.
I have a lot of feelings. Yeah.
I wanted like that love between them. I did feel was real.
Yes.
And
For him.
Well, and
I
it
think
might
for
have
her
been,
too. Yeah.
I think for her too. Yeah, just having that like brightness and like someone who understands me is what she keeps saying. Obviously he did not. So maybe she's delusional there as well. But it was a lovely part of the book to like break up all the difficult stuff until it was also difficult that I did upset again, and I don't know.
Yeah, it felt very Romeo and Juliet, like we can't be together, but we're going to find a way, you know, because they were separated in their group homes, their relationship was a secret. But then you find out what Ted did, and I was like,
yeah, that was really upsetting. Right, I forgot about that. Ugh.
Yeah, because I loved him. And like I just thought like, oh wow, look at this sweet guy. You know, he's really caring to her, and obviously things happen that sometimes are beyond your control. But then how he was, what he did, I was like, oh my God, because wasn't he like part of a gang rape situation?
Yeah,
When he was 14.
Yeah.
He held the girl down for his buddies. So that was definitely a choice situation, I believe.
I think it's hard.
So hard.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say it again. We're all white girls.
Yeah.
And we don't have to make decisions that affect our lives as much as the characters in this book had to.
Yeah.
When I listened to that section, I didn't necessarily feel like for him it was really a choice situation. I think when you surround yourself with people who are doing bad things, that are older than you, and have a certain authority over you, they can get you to do almost anything, especially when you're only 14 years old.
Yeah.
So for me...
Oh, that's right. He was so young.
Yeah.
Like, for me, that... I just mostly felt really upset and bad for him in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He held this poor girl down, and I'm pretty sure that he said that he was like scared and he felt really bad and he didn't want to, but he didn't know what else to do, and he didn't physically assault her other than that, which doesn't make it okay. But at the same time, what was he to do? If he left, would they have killed him? Would they have beat the shit out of him and left him in an alley somewhere? It was a choice, but it was a choice of many bad choices.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, like I was angered and saddened by it, but not to the point where I was like, okay, well, you've lost me, Ted. Like, I still really cared about him, but it was just such a... like, that's just so hard. Like, I can't imagine someone telling me that, and like, I know the person, and especially you're in a relationship with that person, like that, it's a lot to take in and be like, what do I do with this, you know? And I also think it's kind of like, okay, pot meet the kettle, Mary, because she was kind of taken aback, wasn't she, when she heard? But I'm like, okay, well, look what you did.
Oh my goodness. And I'm like, she should have really been like, oh, that's not so bad. I killed a baby.
Yeah.
Well, that is kind of what she ended up on, though, I think, is that she was originally like, wow, that's awful. Then she was like thinking about it more, and she was like, you know what? I can live with that. What I can't live with is him having sex with some other person.
Yeah. To
Right. Later in the book.
us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
And that was another part with Ted where I was like, you know, I just feel bad for you. I'm not even mad about it because what are you going to do? You need money. You have a baby coming. You have been handed all of these other awful choices in life. Nothing has been helping you get out. And when you feel that hopeless and helpless, what else you're going to do? You're going to do whatever you can to get to where you need to be.
Yeah. And he tried to leave with her so many times in this book. Like like Ted was really there for her. I got to say.
He was.
Yeah,
I did believe in him a lot, and I felt that he was so genuine and so caring towards Mary for really like no reason. Like he didn't know her at all. Right. I mean, even when he approached her at the nursing home for the first time, I think he just like had caught sight of her, and I guess thought she was beautiful, and like sat down with her and just had lunch with her, and she didn't talk to him for like a week, and he just kept sitting there, and I'm like, what drew him to her? Because obviously he's built up this idea of her in his head, and I mean that's what so much of the book is about, right? Is people having these ideas about Mary because she doesn't talk very much, and so they are able to put so much onto her, right? So like everyone is invested in her for reasons that are kind of outside of her control. Like I think, you know, obviously Cora loved her because of her kind of history with the case and how she felt really like connected when she was studying it in law school, and Ted loves her because he thinks she's someone she isn't. And then like Miss Stein and everyone else, I think, hated her so much because of her like media fame or infamy, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting part of the story, is like how much of that we put onto people rather than like taking their actions seriously, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
It made me kind of think about how a lot of people describe Ted Bundy as being very like charismatic, and they're like, he didn't even have to talk. He'd walk into a room and everybody was suddenly like kind of enamored with him. And it made me wonder, like, does maybe Mary has that kind of essence about her. Miss Claire takes her under her wing and helps her a lot with SAT stuff.
Oh yeah, she was great.
There are a lot of people that seem to kind of gravitate towards her without ever getting to know her or even having to talk to her for it. So I'm like, is that kind of just an underlying character trait that she possibly has?
Yeah, or is it like a kindness from the characters themselves that they can like connect to someone even without them needing to say anything? Right. I don't know. I was interested in that part of the story for sure.
Well, speaking of perceived or what do you say, preconceptions or how we think of people or how we see people, Mary and the new girl. Everyone, wow. Everyone treated the new girl, you know, like they didn't want her around. That's fine. They don't want anyone around really in that group home, right? But then Mary kind of befriended her, but still kept her distance. And then suddenly the tables turn and we find out that the new girl, who she's never given a name because...
Her name's Sarah.
Oh, Sarah. Okay. I was like, wait a sec. I just saw here. The new girl, her name is Sarah, and we find out that she did kill someone. And did she get away with it?
Unclear.
Yeah.
But that twist made sense to me.
Yes.
Because I was suspicious of New Girl all along. I mean, she was so like mousy and quiet, and everyone was like, oh, what could she have possibly done? It's like, well, obviously something to get her here. And you know, the whole thing about like what was it? She like pushed her mom down the stairs and then like fed her dad peanuts, even though he's like deathly allergic. I'm like, that's not an accident. That's not something that you just pin on someone. That felt calculated, and I was suspicious of her from the get-go.
Yeah. She's like, why isn't he calling me? Why isn't he picking me up? It was an accident. He hasn't answered any of my letters, my phone calls, like all this stuff. And then freaking Mary being like, this girl's crazy. I'm like, okay, wait a sec. You know, like... But I just thought it was so interesting that, like, you have two people in the same room for a while in the group home, because they were roommates at one point, who have a lot of similarities, and yet they both are, like, scared of each other kind of thing, you know? And I'm thinking, like, uh-oh, she's trouble, or uh-oh, I can't trust her, like, all this stuff. And it's like, okay, but you realize that you are the same as her, you know? Like...
Yeah.
Oh, that was quite the twist for me. I was like, oh God, get out of there. Like,
I really enjoyed the part where you find out that the new girl's mom died and she's like laughing. And I say enjoy, not as in like, I was like, oh my God, yay. But I liked reading or like listening to that part. The way that it was written was very enthralling.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. And I just wanted to know more and more and more. And I was like, how has she managed to really pin me with this thing that's lasted like 3 pages? But I didn't feel like that about the whole rest of the book necessarily. I enjoyed the rest of the book, but I wasn't like hanging off my seat like I was with that part. I was like, oh my God, for real, this is crazy. She's like going kind of like, she's like having an episode and she's like laughing and she's like, ah, that bitch is dead. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's because I had a similar feeling, and I wonder if it's because that scene with the new girl in the chair in the middle of the room with all the curtains closed is very cinematic. It's very like, you can picture exactly what it is. Okay, weird choice.
No, in New Moon, when it's like the season's passing and Edward's gone, Kristen Stewart is sitting in the chair, and it's like, all the possibilities.
Okay, it's been at least 10 years since I've seen New Moon, but sure, that's relevant. Yeah.
That's exactly what I thought. Yeah.
But I wonder if that's why it wasn't as effective at the very end, is because we've been in Mary's head this whole time, and we're still in Mary's head when she tells us that. Like, if it had been like a scene where she was talking to someone about it, maybe that would have made it more effective. I don't know.
Yeah, because it's like, why is she suddenly telling herself, yes, I did it?
Right.
Yeah, I get what you're putting down. Okay, yeah. 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 I mean, not that I didn't understand you before. I'm just like, yes, I agree with that. Agree. Because I still liked the end. But yeah, I think you're right there. Yeah.
I was also like kind of, I don't know if I'm not miffed, but I was like a little like, when it kind of led up so many times in the book to her telling what happened. And then it would just like, she'd be like, and so I told them. And then it would be like the next chapter. And then at the end, when she's like, yeah, my mom did it, and she shoved the rosary down her throat or whatever happened. And then at the very end, she goes, just kidding, I did it. And I was like, why did you make it such a fucking big deal then? Why didn't we learn at the beginning that, like, what the supposed story was? Yeah. I would have liked to know, because I felt like it would have informed more of the stuff that happened later. And I think that it would have added to the story for me to know what her supposed story was, rather than waiting until like the last third.
Yeah, because for the first third or half of the book, I was pretty much, I was like, oh, so the mom did it. Yeah. Okay, big whoop. But it wasn't really confirmed. And then when it was confirmed, I was like, okay, so the mom did it. And then at the very end, it was like, just kidding, it wasn't the mom. So yeah, I think that just the setup and some of the timeline was like, didn't quite work for me.
Yeah. I've read books similar to this in terms of the kind of plot twist. And I mean, they were by more seasoned authors, and authors that have written a lot of like horror, thriller, suspense books. So they have a lot of like practice with how to do these kind of like plot twists and reveals and everything like that. But I feel like the way that it happened, everything just kind of fell a little short. Like, I could see what she was reaching for, and it was almost there, but like as I was going to like get to that point, it was like I was like slipping, and I was like, okay, no, not this time. And then the next thing would happen, I'd be like, okay, no, not this time either. Okay. Because there was just something a little like lackluster about all of these reveals. They were going in the right direction, but she wasn't taking it as far as it should have gone. And I don't know if that's because they were marketing it towards like being a YA book. Maybe it could have been better served as an adult book, so she could have been a little bit more graphic or whatever it
Nuanced,
might be. Yeah, to get to those places. But that was something for me where I was just like, because this is like a genre that I really like, I was looking for more. And I was looking for those kinds of little tidbits that weren't happening.
Yeah, and I do think, like, this book, there were very few and far between, like, moments of happiness or hope, which, even though it was a short book and I thought it was fast-paced for me to read, like, there was a big lack of comic relief or little moments of joy, you know, which were really hard. I know that's, like, you know, unfortunately very realistic for a lot of people who are in this situation. But yeah, it was just like, wow, because it's just like you're saying, like, oh, maybe this, oh no, oh, maybe this, oh no, you know, not yet.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's like, oh, Ted bought her the textbook. How did he do that? We don't know. He probably had to steal it, you know, but he did a nice gesture for her. And then the girls take it, or her den mothers, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, they like rip it up.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I know. She can't have even one nice thing.
no, like every little thing, you know. And then she's got to get a calculator. Oh no, how am I going to get a calculator? Oh, I want to go to do this. Oh, I don't have a license. We go wait all day at the DMV or whatever it is. She doesn't have the right paperwork to get it. Like, all this stuff. It's like, oh my God, you know. Oh,
Yeah, and that was one thing that I thought was a really powerful kind of demonstration of all the barricades in place for people in the system, and people, like, racialized people, uneducated people, to kind of get to the base level of, like, the documentation that you need to be a person.
Yeah.
And there are just, like, so many roadblocks in the way to that. That was, I think, a really well executed, kind of poignant point in the book.
yes. And didn't she say something along the lines of, like, her Ms. Reba and was it Miss Stein and her caseworker, Mr. Winter, I think, like, they all could have told her what she needed before going to the DMV, and they didn't. They let her go and wait all day only to hear a no. You know, like, just complete bullshit. Honestly, like, just, yeah. There's so many moments like that where you're just like, oh my God. And that's why we are so sympathetic to Mary. So that's why I'm like, even though she is a murderer, sociopath, I still have sympathy, you know, which is like, yikes. Which to me means, even though there's plot holes, I thought Tiffany, and I'm not saying you didn't think she did a good job, but I think she did a good job, because I still feel sympathetic to Mary, where normally I'd be like, how dare you, you know? So, yeah, I don't know.
I think I feel sympathetic to the situation, but I don't feel sympathetic for her.
Yeah.
Because...
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Can we talk about Mrs. Richardson?
Yeah.
Because, wow.
Alyssa's mom.
Yeah. Like,
oh my God.
I
yes,
could not
so
believe
tough.
she came and she's like very nice and she's like, I'm going to kill your baby.
Yeah.
I was shook. I was like, oh my God.
But didn't she say that as an example, though? Like, wasn't it kind of like... Because, what's her face? Mary was asking her for something.
What's her face?
Right? What's her face? Yeah. Mary was asking Mrs. Richardson to, like, foster her child or something.
No, this was after she said that. So the first time So Mrs. Richardson goes to the home where Mary is, and they're talking, and she's like, I don't know why she's here. Mama told me she was gonna see me in baby jail, and she never came. And Mrs. Richardson looks at her stomach, and she goes, you're carrying low. You're gonna it's a boy. And then she says, I'm gonna kill your baby. I was like,
well,
what the fuck?
But then when she sees her again at the apartment, they're suddenly like okay together, and she's like, we're going to raise this baby together. And like Mary says that, right? And she's like, we're going to be a happy little family because she...
In her head, yeah, because she's explaining, like, I wanted Mrs. Richardson to be my mom, and I wanted to show her that I could take care of Alyssa, and I was good because I broke this crystal rabbit, and I wanted to show her that she could trust me. What's Mrs. Richardson's first name? Melissa?
Yeah, Melissa, and her kid's name is Alyssa.
That was confusing when I was listening to it during the, like, interview parts, when it's like, Melissa says this, and then detective, Alyssa, blah, 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 and I was like, what?
Choices. Yeah.
So, any authors out there, please don't name characters names.
Oh my god. Iluana, whatever her friggin' name is.
Ileana.
Yeah.
And Ileana.
From A Crown of... Yes. I love that series, but I just about lost it. I'm like, I don't know who you are. Who are you? Please announce yourself, okay? Yes. Thank you. Who am I? Who am I? Move on. Anyways, sorry. We are bringing
like,
the
I don't know what
relief.
movie that's from, but I know it's Eddie Murphy.
Yes. There was like no comic relief in the book, and that's why we are here. Because
yeah, I mean, thank goodness we're here to bring you some much needed laughs, dear listeners, because if you've read this book and you made it to this point, you're going through the same you're going through the same shit we've been going through, so I'm sure you need a couple of giggles here and there, and you're welcome.
Yeah, but anyway, she was like saying in her head, I want Mrs. Richardson to be my mom. If she adopts my baby, then I can get him back when I'm 18, and I can show her how good a mom I am, and we'll be a happy family and all this stuff. And that's when I was really like, this girl's delusional. It's like, this lady does not want you around. No. Ever.
Yeah.
No, and it was so sad too when she visited her in her apartment, and everything was like dusty and like not clean, and Mrs. Richardson was just like sitting in the same spot she always sits, and just drinking, and saying that her husband left because of like they disagreed on whether Mary why did he leave? Because he disagreed about what should happen to Mary. Yeah, because he wanted her to go to prison, and Mrs. Richardson was like, well, I don't think she did it, and I don't want her like life to be ruined. One child's life is gone, and I don't want another child's life to be gone. Right. Yeah, it was just so sad to see that like stark grief. Mm-hmm. And in my head it had been like 20 years, but it had only been 6 years. That actually makes more sense now. For some reason I was like, oh, this happened 20 years ago. Yeah, I think I was feeling that way too. I felt like very removed from the incident. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The crime, I guess.
Maybe because Mary felt so removed. Dun dun dun.
Mary doesn't care.
Yeah, I mean, maybe,
I just felt compelled to do, like, the John Cena, like, you can't see me.
Oh, I was like, I mean, they can't, because it's a podcast.
Having a weird day.
Yeah. I mean, talking about this book is weird, too. Like, I feel, I was having so many feelings reading it, and I kept putting it down and being like, I don't want to pick it back up, because it's bumming me out. Oh, no. And that's okay. Like, I think not every book has to make me feel happy, but it was, I was in like kind of a sad place anyway, and then just picking it up and reading about all these sad, too realistic things that happen in real life really was like really getting to me, and having so little joy in the story, like we were saying, like everything that happened that was nice got taken away immediately, and it was like so like I felt so beat down reading it, which I think is important and means that it was effective and that it was teaching me something. But I don't know where I'm going with this, but I felt it had to be said.
Yeah. Yeah, I almost feel like if there's no light at the end of the tunnel, or like no little moment of joy or relief or whatever, I mean, again, I'm not in this situation, but no matter what, there's always even just a tiny moment of hope or joy, because then what's the point? You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure if we spoke to people in prison, they could tell you, like, most of the time it's awful, but there's also some really good times, and like moments where I laugh, or moments where, you know, like where I have a friend here or something, right? But in this book, it was like she was with Ted and that was her highlight, and then it just went to shit, you know? Like, it was like, because even that got ruined in this book. It was just like, whew, yeah.
Yeah. At the end, I felt like with Ted that I almost felt like she didn't even really like want him to be around when he's like saying, when am I going to see you again? And she's like, well, I don't want to lie to him, so I tell him the truth. Like, I don't know when I'm going to see you again and stuff. But I just like got this feeling at the end that it was just like her, and she wanted the baby, and she just wanted it to be her and the baby, and she didn't care about anything else. And maybe that's not what was going on, but I just felt so bad for him, because you can tell the whole time he just wants to do something right.
Yeah.
He's working the whole novel to be good to her, and he protects her. You see on multiple occasions where he protects her. And I just felt so shitty for him. And I was like, poor Ted.
Yeah.
I love you.
I know. I feel so like... so heavy.
And we didn't even talk about this. She pours bleach into Miss Stein's coffee.
Yes!
Yeah.
At the
Before
end of
she
the book,
leaves,
too.
right?
Yeah.
How much
I was like,
do you
just
think?
Miss Stein?
A splash?
Why'd you just pick her?
Do you think she
Like,
did
there's
like...
so many people
But
in
wait,
this film that suck.
did she like kill her, or was it like a double, or was it like just a little splash? Like, how much bleach?
I feel like bleach is toxic in a very small dose. I don't know, though.
I don't know.
Honestly, I might not have finished this book if it wasn't for the podcast. Just because of the place that I was. Very different, but it was like my sister had just moved away, and I was like already feeling emotional, and then I was reading this book, and I was like, I'm so sad. Like, I just want to be reading something happy. And I'm glad I did finish it, so that I can have, because I need to have the whole picture before I feel I can judge something. But it was so sad.
Yeah. I was rooting, like, okay, I felt sad at times, but I felt my overall experience was me feeling hopeful and rooting for Mary, because I was like, something's got to give. She's going to be acquitted. She's going to be found innocent. Like, all this stuff, like, please, please, please. And then the twist, right? I was like, oh my God! And mad, but still enjoyed it. So I think even though I was sad at some points, my overall feelings were, she's going to get through this, because that's what this book is. We're going to get through it. We're going to, you know, and then I was like, nope.
Yeah. I know. I was expecting that too. I think purely because it's a YA book. I was like, oh, well, obviously it's going to get wrapped up with a nice little bow at the end.
Yeah, she'll score a perfect score in her SATs, and she'll go to college, and everything will be fine.
And I think I still would have appreciated the twist ending more if all of that stuff had happened. I think that would have made it better, because she like really succeeded. And then to find out at the end, like, she's like sitting in her dorm room and she's like writing her like notes,
Memoir.
and then she just like thinks, and she's like, yeah, I killed that bitch. And it's like, dun, dun, so dumb. Like, I don't know. I think that would have just been a little better, in my opinion. It would have hooked me more than her kind of like half getting away with it and then being satisfied with herself for still being the word of this. I don't know.
How do you think younger readers have responded to this or will respond to this book? Because like it's quite heavy and dark for
I would
young
not
adults.
want my kid to read this.
I think if they were in high school, I'd be like, yeah, you can read
If
this.
they're in high school.
Yeah. But like
That's true.
it's a lot. And I mean, also, we have the privilege of not having to, when we were kids, we didn't get a talk about, hey, you're white. You know what I mean? And this is what this means. So I feel like it might be different if you're black. Like maybe you would be like, hey, do you want to read this book? I mean, do you want to read this book? I don't know. Like, or yes, you're allowed to read this book. However, let's talk about it. You know what I mean? Like this is such an intense book. What?
That's like when the therapist was like, here, I really want you to read this book. I think there'll be a lot of things that you'll find relatable in it. And it was Push by Sapphire. And Mary was like, are you kidding me? You think that's what my life is like?
Precious. That based on the novel Push by Sapphire. But no, I totally forgot about that part. That was quite
cringy.
something.
I mean, Miss Veronica in every scene was just ultimate cringe factor.
She was the worst substitute teacher. You know what I mean? She had no control over that room. She was not helping anyone. It was awful.
It was awful. Yeah. And I think Mary said at one point, like, she didn't really have to be a therapist for her job. Like, she was just doing it as a hobby because her husband was rich or something. And I was like, makes sense. Great. Volunteer therapist. Love it.
Yeah.
Back to your point about younger readers. I think if I had read this book as a kid, it would have taught me a lot, and I think that's really important. And I'm not a parent, so I guess I can't say like whether I would, give my kid this to read or anything. But I did come across a summary of this book while I was kind of writing up the outline for this episode, and it was a summary by like on this website called like Parents Books to Read or something, and it had all these like taglines or like ratings for like drug use, high, violence, high, like 5 out of 5 stars, and then
5 out of 5.
like education 5 out of 5, and then like all these things. I was like, maybe this rating system would mean parents wouldn't want to give it to their kids. I don't know.
Yeah,
but I guess if the
like there were a lot of
education,
high level things.
If the education was high, though, then like I think this is
like,
a book.
Was the message? Like you were saying, Nikki, like the message that you got at the end, you were like, I don't know if that's the message that I want to come away with.
Well, see, that's the thing. I think this is a book that if I also don't have children, I'm just going to put that out there.
None of us do, for the record.
But if my kid, my hypothetical child, and they were like under 15, I would say, 14 or 15, like not in high school, like just starting high school, said, I want to read this book, I think I would say, I'm going to read it too. And we'll read it at the same time.
And talk about it.
And talk about what is happening in this. Because I don't think that it was educating on the right things. I think that the ending really negated a lot of the stuff that was happening in this book that would have been good education tools for younger audiences. So I think... And I feel like this now, I think as I'm like getting older and I'm getting closer to the age where I feel like I want to have kids. We talked about in our episode of The Golden Compass, which is a middle grade book. And I said, I think if my kid reads this book, I would want to talk to them about it because it has a lot of stuff to do with religion and a negative view on specific religions. And I think that it's important when you're a parent or a guardian of somebody who's young to let them explore new things and like challenge themselves, but also be there to help guide them and make sure that they are getting the right things out of what they're consuming.
Right. It would open up a dialogue. And I think that would be important. I just wouldn't want my kid to be bummed out, But that's me being facetious for the moment. No. But I do take your point. I think it's well put, Nikki.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My parents never did that with me. Like, there were movies I wasn't allowed to watch, or like TV shows I wasn't allowed to watch, but with books, I read whatever. Like, I read a lot of books that probably none of them scarred me, but I definitely read some things that were like adult contemporary, like sex scenes and stuff, and I was like, what? Okay, like, just keep going, because I like did not care at that age. It wasn't like super explicit, but like, I think if my mom knew, she would have been like, oh, maybe wait a year or two. But yeah.
Do we have anything else that we want to talk about before we get into our favorite parts / quotes?
I'm good.
I'm good. I'm bummed.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, don't be sorry.
Because I listened to this as an audiobook, I don't have any parts highlighted as favorite parts, but I think the parts that stood out to me the most were the parts with Mrs. Richardson. I really felt like I empathized with her, and I just felt so sad, and I felt myself kind of tearing up sometimes listening to her talk, or like the descriptions of the apartment and how Alyssa's room was exactly the same. And I wasn't surprised to see or hear or read that her and her husband split up after. That's something that happens to a lot of couples after they lose a child, because the thing that was holding their relationship together is no longer there anymore. So it really just it touched me. It made me very emotional to read those parts with her. But yeah, I don't have anything highlighted. So,
well, I have a quote that I thought was just really well written. I don't like it. Like, I'm not happy about it.
Okay.
But I would just like to read it, if that's okay. I just thought it was really well executed in the emotions that it provoked in me.
Okay.
So it's from chapter 6. It's after Kelly and Tara steal Mary's $400. And Mary describes her anger. And so the quote is, "They turned a knob inside me. I hear the 4 clicks of the gas pop before the flame ignites. My heart is covered in peanut oil. I can smell it frying, burning to a crisp. My legs move like a robot's. I have no control over anything anymore. I'm gone. Someone else is here now." I thought that was just a really effective paragraph to show us exactly how Mary's mind and temper works. And I think that was one of the kind of many examples of just really strong writing, being able to convey emotion, which I think Tiffany D. Jackson really excelled at.
Agreed. Kelly.
I don't know if I have a quote, because I'm just looking at Goodreads. I don't have my book with me.
So
no,
Does someone have it?
Yeah.
What kind of person would take it from you?
It's okay. But
it was buried. It was buried in the box.
It's okay. Well, I guess I'll share this quote, because I just think it's very... It explains a lot, I think, of Mary in the book. So the quote is, "You ever smell a newborn? It's so different, just new. They're like these tiny, brand new humans that don't know who you are or what you've done or anything, but they love you anyways." So I just think, like, it's so
knowing what
sad.
we know.
It just like makes me feel gross. This whole book makes me feel like, blech,
right?
icky.
Yeah, I need some more of that Christmas rum punch. Need to get in a better spirit. My God. There was so much in this book, but I really did enjoy it, and it made me excited to read more of her, because like, for her first book, like, I'm not mad, I mean, I am mad,
I think
but
it's
I'm
only
not
going to
mad.
get better.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the BYOB podcast. If you enjoyed this and want to hear more from us, you can head over to our social media accounts to keep up to date on all things BYOB. We've got Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, the works. Stay tuned after this to hear the first line of our next read, Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, a Gothic literary classic which I'm sure needs no introduction. See you next time, and until then, keep on drinking in great stories. Cheers!
Next time on BYOB, the Bring Your Own Book podcast. Last night, I dreamt I went to Manderley again.